the hoopla can sometimes interrupt what you're trying to do as a teacher. So we just, we appreciate making space. You do it lovingly, not to imply that you don't do it, but your support just, helps. And probably now more than ever, students want to kind of come back to that kind of thing. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks.
ISD report, Ms. Johnson.
Yeah. Next month, we have the Three Rivers, dinner, I think it's Prairie Bluff. So, if you can, sign up, it's usually a good time. I don't know if they still got restrictions going on like they did the last time they were there.
Okay.
So, you catch to see by signing yourself up.
What is it?
It's a dinner and a program.
When?
October 27th.
Okay.
Keep going to the next one, and then I'll get you the date.
Is there a restriction on seating? Do I have to sign up as quickly as possible?
We have to pay for, we have to register and pay for it.
Well, yeah, would they limit seating? Cause I assume when you say restrictions, there would be
Well,
Okay.
last year, they had it,
Yeah.
they could only have so many people in the room.
yeah,
So when I tried to sign up, they said, we're at capacity.
yeah.
Oh.
So I don't know if
So
they're
that's what
doing
I'm
that now.
concerned about.
And it could, many board members with Three Rivers being really your, Three Rivers IASB being your professional organization. A lot of board members in that Three Rivers area really encompasses Will, good part of Grundy, and parts of Kendall. So, like most things, like when you go to the III conference, the soonest register is the surest attendee. So I would just ask board members, I think Dr. Shaw and Mrs. Johnson have already signed up for that dinner. So Mr. Travis or Ms. Lopez Caniva or Mr. Navarro, if you just contact Kathy, she would, register you.
It is, it's October 27th.
It's the 27th, yes.
Yeah.
And again, it's at Prairie Bluff, off of Redwood Road.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
That's all, okay. All right, next we have foundation report, Ms. Angela Adolph.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I thought I would tell a story with some pictures, so you could kind of see a little bit of Young Hearts for Life. We hosted 230-ish volunteers at our campus. Did a lot of outreach. Super proud of Young Hearts for Life. It's a organization that, while the screening is free to the students, we needed to raise just about $20,000 in order to host that. And it wasn't, the foundation was able to partner with many different people where the cost was pennies on the dollar for our students, and it didn't have to impact the district budget. So we were really proud to be able to partner with the district to do that and touch the lives of so many of our community members. Young Hearts for Life gave me an excuse to go out into the community and talk about the foundation and bring people in to encourage them to come and volunteer. Some of the board members were there. They brought friends and family. So it was really quite something to be in school with so many other people from our community. So I just thought I'd share some of those are some of the social media posts that we were able to do. And here's some of the pictures of this on Wednesday before the screening. This is just about 2 weeks ago. The people came in for training, so they had to come in the night before for about an hour and a half worth of training. And here are our students in line with our amazing volunteers.
Angela, can you explain why the students were there the night before?
So some of the students did come the night before to, about 40 of our students helped set up and then also participate in the training where they were kind of like the live test, I don't want to say dummies, so live test patients so that people could see and practice how to put the leads on for their heart screening. So 40 of our students were able to get some significant volunteer hours through the Young Hearts for Life program. They're the ones that offer the hours. So set up the practice session and then also take down. So it was nice to see the kids come alongside us and help set up and take down from this event. So it was a kind of an all hands on deck event at the school. There wasn't anyone, no one was untouched, from transportation to Kathy, who hosted all of, so when you have 200 volunteers, you have to feed them when they're here all day. So she was an amazing host in here and made sure that that went off beautifully. We invited 3 nursing colleges. They were able to come in and get clinical hours, working with Young Hearts for Life with us. About half of our students were screened, which is really so super great for our first run at this. And the day of the screening, just about a dozen phone calls were made home. Went home. So the day when there was some sort of when the doctors read something, because the doctors came on staff that day, the phone call went out that day, so the parents would know if there was something that needed to be followed up with. So that was really great. And one thing that it is, I think, interesting to mention is the doctor that's in charge of this is the lead cardiac pediatrician. So in the world. So he really knows what he's doing, and he came here to our school and provided this service to our students. So it was really, it was exhausting, but I even said to someone, if someone was like, we should do that again next week, I'd be like, yep, we should. And we would have figured out how to get that done. It was really meaningful to be a part of it. It was meaningful enough that about a handful of the volunteers from our community have now gone on to continue to volunteer with Young Hearts for Life at 2 other schools. So that feels really, and then hear that back from them saying, like, this was really great. I think I'm going to just do this. This is going to be what I do with my free time while the kids are at school, which is amazing. So yeah, I mean, sorry, we can keep going a little bit more. So that's
Yeah.
registration. Jeanette Castillo had Fox News come in and talk to the director from Young Hearts for Life and Dr. McBride. And then the Queen passed away that day, so they cut our news feed. They did cut our news feed, so it was just bad timing. But
What
so
time was this?
I'm sorry.
What time was it?
So it was during the day. It happened all day. So from 7:45 until 2:45, they were here. So kids came. They came during their PE, health, or driver's ed class, and some of our athletes that don't have those classes would come they came during Compass or study hall. I also have, if you want to keep going, Eric, sorry. And at the very end, there's a little video just to give you an idea of like the hustle and bustle. Sorry, it's bigger. There it is. Oh, hopefully it comes through. See if we can play it. Just for the hustle and bustle, it may not. But so that was really great. We're excited to have them back in another 2 years. So that's something that we hope to do every other year. So the goal would be that all of our students would have that screening at least once. Moving on with the foundation.
And Angela, if we just pause for a
Of
second.
course.
I do think it's important, from our board member volunteers, just to the board, of course, allowing this, but really every administrator in this room was engaged some way. Mr. Thompson, obviously. I saw the night before Mr. Thompson stringing extension cords
Yes.
himself with Chip Schmidt and, his crew. Tony Kandari's help, his 2 assistants, did the day of permissions, calling home to say, grant permission. Obviously, Angela, Jeanette Castillo with the publicity, the CWC helping handle volunteers, Stephanie Croy, Dave Needesball, shuttling. We were very lucky to have a partner in Reverend John Peterson over at Shepherd on the Hill that allowed us to park there. And then we could use our own school buses to bring volunteers over here so they didn't have to fight the parking situation or make it more difficult for our families and parents coming to school. And I could just go right down the line, Mr. Dusterhoff with technology, our principals, spending really the whole day there when they have many, many things to do. Dr. Cristofero was there. So there really wasn't a leader, and then our PE department, because they gave up their whole day, but also did all of the advertising purpose, why this is being done, education on wellness for students. Helping students understand, as my brother who's in cardiology would say, you have a plumbing system and you have an electrical system. And this really looks at the electrical rhythms in the human body, which sometimes can be a peril for sudden cardiac arrest in teens. So just so many people coming together. Sorry to break
Amazing.
your stride.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. It really was. It really was a huge lift from a nice team effort. It felt really good to be a part of the team. So just the next couple of things coming up this Saturday is not only homecoming for our students, but also maybe for alumni. And we're hosting the Taste of Lockport downtown Lockport on Hamilton Street, Friday at 5. We'll be playing Saturday from 5 to 6:30, and then Maggie Speaks will play from 7:30 till 10:30. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully you guys can make it. What else is coming up? We have a Fine Arts Festival that we're gonna do November 15th, I believe that's a Tuesday, where we'd like to showcase the fine arts offerings of our schools, where people can kind of come from the community and do a choose your own adventure on what they might like to see, whether it be a small snippet of a play, a little dance number, the band playing just 1 or 2 songs, and maybe the drama team or something along those lines, having student artwork out just to really showcase what the fine arts program offers at Lockport. We're gonna do a nice heavy invite to our 7th and 8th grade families so that they can really get a feel for the place and let them know what is waiting for them once they come here, as well as inviting the community at large who may not understand all of the things that we do here. So we're excited to host that. And our next meeting is, I'm gonna have to cheat and look.
October 4th.
October 4th.
that up for you.
In the Porter Room, of course. We are excited that we have a board of 15 now, so I'm excited for what that entails and how much more we can do in our community with more helping hands.
And then a question, I'm sorry.
go.
Yeah.
As far as for the fall, for the Fine Arts Festival that you're promoting, have you thought about reaching out to the senior citizens, like Lago Vista, Carolyn Lakes, to see if they could?
Yes, that will absolutely be something that we're hoping to partner, kind of almost in general with them to, when we host any kind of event, to welcome them in. That was something, we reach out to them to volunteer for Young Hearts for Life, and kind of want to continue reaching out to them to let them know what we have going on here, so yes. Yeah.
Also, one other note, on Thursday morning, Angela's meeting with a friend of the program, Jeff Cohn, to work with him to facilitate a retreat, those 15, relatively new board members on the foundation, to do a governance retreat with his facilitation, just to focus in on their mission, their bylaws, their governance, their work with Angela, as that much larger foundation board kind of comes together, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Legislative report.
It's a short report because there is election season, so I know, don't be shocked, this might be the first time in, I'm not sure how long, something hasn't been enacted in the legislature that's impacted us, but there really is no news on the legislative front. I think everyone, whoever has any, whatever party affiliation in Springfield, is out on the campaign trail right now. So the legislature is very quiet these days. So,
The big 3 races.
I'm sorry, what, Mr.
The
Devine?
big 3 races, Attorney
Yeah, there's a
General,
lot,
Governor,
and a lot of local races
Senator.
too. Yeah, so very, a lot of political activity.
Big 3.
Moving on to public comments. At each regular open meeting, members of the public and district employees may address the school board during the public comment section of the agenda. Individuals appearing before the board are expected to respectfully follow the guidelines of Policy 2:230 and Policy 8:30 available upon sign-in. Public comments are important to the board. However, it is customary not to respond on issues until time has been taken to gather information to discuss all options. Lack of action or response does not imply lack of interest in the issues brought to the board. Dr. Shaw, can you keep time for me? Thank you. First we have, let's see, Mrs. Patty Colella.
Hello. I'm here to talk about one of the books I picked at random off the English Contemporary Literature list for the juniors. Before I read a page out of it, I want to let you know that I'm only here to make you aware, not to place blame on anyone. I understand it's not your job to be reading the books, that you hire people to create the curriculum. With that said, I also know that books are advertised and suggested to the teachers. They're just doing what they're told. I really do not want to be reading this, but that's my point. You'll understand once I read it. Okay, ready? Brace yourselves. What's the difference between Bill Clinton and a screwdriver? A screwdriver turns in screws and, wait, what do you get when you cross Ted Krasinski with Monica Lewinsky? A dynamite blowjob. Did you hear about the Oval Office cigars? They're ribbed and lubricated. Or Monica whispering to her dry cleaner, can you get the stain out for me? Dry cleaner, come again? Monica, no, it's mustard. If any of you adults think this is okay, then we truly have lost our way. I understand that in this day and age, this may not be shocking to the kids, but that's not the point. It sets a terrible precedence. It is equivalent to giving them porn because they're going to look at it anyway. If you want future generations to have good morals, then you need to lead by example. These books are not for creating leaders. I feel that it is wrong to force feed them this mindless reading material. This is not a book that nourishes the mind. There are so many good books, so many uplifting and noble books, books filled with joy and wonder. So why are we picking books that have TV episodes on mainstream media? There was also another book I checked out. It's called Just Mercy. I didn't get around to reading it, but on my way out of the library, the public library, the librarian came back out and caught me, and she was afraid that I was going to give it to a teenager to read. And I told her I wasn't, but then she did mention that there's like a student one, a junior version, but that begs the point of why bother? So it seems that a lot of critical thinking has gone out the window because we leave it to the experts. What if these experts are corrupt? Do you know how to destroy a nation? You make future generations weak in mind, body, and spirit. Some of these books do just that. Yep, this was just a random book. Thank you.
What's the name of the book?
This one's Little Fires Everywhere.
Is what?
Little Fires Everywhere. But I can take any random book. There's more in there. It wasn't just that page. I just picked that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, communications?
Yes. We received a note of thanks from the Laporte family thanking the district for a donation to the American Lung Association in memory of Mrs. Laporte's father, Joseph. And Bridget Laporte is the science teacher at East Campus.
Okay. Right there, we have the Freedom of Information Press. We have two of them. All right, next we're moving on to our approval items. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 15, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Mr. Travis. Are there any questions to those meeting minutes? All right, hearing none, roll call.
Navarro,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Shaw,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the September 2022 board member expenses?
So moved.
I second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Ms. Johnson. Are there any questions to those expenses? All right, hearing none, roll call.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Shaw,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, do I have a motion to approve the August 2022 treasurer's report?
I move.
Second.
And for the board votes, I am playing the role of Stephanie Croy
Okay.
to draw your attention. These are your customary, you get a first and a second, so interject before you vote. Mrs. Croy is doing a required webinar, some professional development right this moment, should be joining us in a few moments. But just two things to draw the board's attention to. You've got your customary reports, particularly the financial reports, which are so important, our statement of position, our comparison from last year to this year in terms of expenditures and revenues. But in particular, two important pieces in this report, union due certification. This is a process that Mrs. Croy and Mr. Kandari go through where we, in essence, work with the union to withhold dues through a payroll deduction process. So there's a certification process that occurs every single year. And then Open Meetings Act, this is Public Act 97-259, it was enacted in 2012, which requires the Board of Education on our website to publish the annual administrator, teacher, and teacher salary report. So that report is there, part of your board packet this evening, and it will be posted up on our website in alignment with, hello, Mrs. Croy, in alignment with this Open Meetings Act requirement. Anything to add to the treasurer's report? We're just about to vote. So your time, your timing is, or any questions for Mrs. Croy or myself before you? We've got a first and a second, but.
Sounds like you just reviewed the extra things that were added this particular month, so that's all
Yes.
I've reviewed, yeah.
Okay,
Yes. Okay.
and your roll call vote.
All right, just roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Travis.
Yeah.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, superintendent report.
Okay, it is homecoming week, and I there's a lot of dressing up. I do want to, the district office definitely was in dress-up mode tonight, but I want to give a shout-out to Dr. Green and Dr. Greenan leading the way today, and I half thought they would come to the board meeting tonight dressing down. They did an extraordinary job today, so it's great. Just a couple things this evening. Foundation and public relations success, it's already been mentioned today, but I think it's something that the board should think about being very strategic in your decisions in the past 2 years with the foundation, being very strategic in public relations and bearing the fruit. I think events like Young Hearts for Life, Taste of Lockport, a fine arts festival, don't happen by themselves. There's so much energy, and that's really Mrs. Angela Adolph. And then last year, we had a banner year of awards, and again, this year, for the Illinois chapter of the National School Public Relations Association. There's really no other way to put it. Lockport was really at the front edge of all the districts. I went to a meeting a week later. There were a number of superintendents who just said it was really amazing how this team, Eric Slager, Deanna Gregorich, and Jeanette Castillo are doing such a good job telling your story, ultimately. And Mrs. Castillo, when we interviewed her, said, I want to be the lead reporter for the district, and she has fulfilled that and more, from alumni tours on Saturday to other things. So really kudos to them. And especially a direct mailing to 34,200 households that was given the highest award in the state, so pretty amazing. One thing also that I would like you to pay attention to, item number 2, is on the consent agenda, you will see that there's a long list of support personnel. Sometimes as a board, you make decisions in the spring, for example, pay rates for bus drivers, paraprofessionals, dean's assistants. And right now, if we went to school districts, these are the individuals that people cannot hire. I was at a meeting of suburban superintendents on Friday. Every single superintendent has open positions in bus drivers, paraprofessionals, dean's assistants. Tonight, you'll approve a very long list of people, and I think that's the result of your strategy to think about compensation, to think about outreach, particularly with our bus drivers, who are just so important now. So I wanted you to acknowledge that, and when you vote on that consent agenda, having a long list, that's a good list. Recent research and data on COVID-19, this sounds like, shout out to board members, but sometimes over time, things sort of come back around. I had heard from a number of people, a number of press agencies are beginning to really delve into the 2 most intense years that we had COVID-19. I try not to say it out loud anymore. Put it well behind us. And I had heard that there was a particular edition of the New York Times where the whole Sunday national opinion section was devoted to research on schools, and then was able to get a copy through a friend, say, hey, I really want to look at that. about those 2 years of disruption. And the data is very clear that the longer schools were remote, the more there were struggles for students. And I would really ask you in that day to reflect back on some decisions you made. Think about it. In the summer of 2020, you allowed 600 to 800 athletes to come on campus and have sports programs. We found a way to make it happen. It was different, but you found a way to have them come on campus, and you permitted all of our 12-month staff to come back. That prepared us for August of 2020, where we brought our students back in. It was in hybrid, but they were on campus on a regular basis. By March of 2021, when many schools in the area were coming off full remote learning, we actually finished the last 12 weeks of the school year full in-person learning for all learners. And then really going into August 2021, never really looked back. There were many struggles through that period, but I think that decision that you made to bring people on campus as quickly as possible is very consequential. And the research is bearing that out. And I think that's just important to note. Item 4 up here, school campus safety and security, just never really leaves our mind. We feel great about our school resource officer. I think if, at an appropriate time, I think we should have a board presentation. We introduce you to our 2 officers, they present. They've done a great job just so early on. Also, we continue to work with Police Chief Rich Harang, Deputy Chief Ron Huff, and really something that we're digging into right now is our campus evacuation and reunification plan. God forbid we ever have an incident where we have to evacuate any of our buildings, either an orderly evacuation, we know something's wrong and we have the time to do an orderly evacuation, or an emergency evacuation, making that the most coordinated plan that we can make. So we are working on that deeply. Facilities, maybe just open this up if there are any board member questions. The past 2 board meetings, we've talked about our facility needs, particularly at Central as it ages. And recently we had a Finance and Facility Committee meeting that explored that issue of maybe narrowing in on a strategy of a renovation of Central, to give it maybe life into 30, maybe another 50 years as a centerpiece for the community. You've really weighed new construction versus renovation. Based on that, I've been doing a number of different things, working with President Lopez Caniva, and I invite any of you to do what we did with the A fields when we renovated the A fields, to have a citizens advisory panel, to weigh in not only on our strategy, but to weigh in how we would go about that strategy. Mrs. Lopez Caniva has sent me a number of names of citizens she thinks would be good on an advisory panel like that. I invite any board member to do that as well. We continue to reach out to both Amoresco and our architects to try to understand what would be the scope and the cost of a proper renovation of Central and finishing some of the renovations at East that were proposed in 2017, how we would do that. Any board member thoughts or comments or questions on that? Just want to open it up to you on that issue. You might have been thinking about it or thinking it over the past month. Just any questions or anything I can answer.
I have a question about the safety issue.
About the what issue,
The
Mrs.?
safety.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you say we're deficient, are we, because we've been making changes.
I think with our current building evacuation and reunification plan, I think there's some work that we have to do on 2 levels. One, with new school resource officers and new chief, there's an understanding that, and we do this, Mr. Bartley does this expertly, every year we have a safety meeting in November, all of our municipalities, all of our first responders. But I think Chief Harang has really detected that we need to go a little bit deeper, that, and Will County, something I want to share with you, and I'll maybe just share in a moment, I think I have enough copies. Will County is really trying to unify around language and strategies, because there's an understanding that there's ever a major event that could range from a gas leak to a bomb threat to an active incident, that you would have so many different people involved, not just Lockport Police. You'd have Will County Sheriff, you would have Lockport Fire District. And so there's some work coordinating all of those agencies so they would know exactly what to do in all the schools that they serve. The second piece is for us, how do we, in any kind of emergency situation, and especially with inclement weather that we oftentimes have around here, how do we get students off of a campus to a muster or to a place of refuge, and then get those students to a site where they can be reunified, meaning they're away from the campus, away from the incident, they're in a place that's safe, that's sheltered, that it's accessible to parents, accessible to buses. So in many ways, evacuation is a two-step. It's going to a place where we reunite, students muster. It's getting students from that place to a place where their parents can come and collect them. One of the critical things is getting them away from the campus if it was a disaster site, a crime scene. So we just have a little bit of work to do here on a couple different stages. One, really fleshing that out so everyone knows exactly what we would do. And then two, communicating it so that students, staff, parents know exactly what would happen if we had to leave one of our buildings. So, I hope that answered your question.
With the ETA on when the plan will be done.
Well, we have to have right now, we have an operational plan. For us, we're talking weeks where we want to finish off some thinking that we're doing. Right now, for all of those larger organizations, I would say probably October, Mr. Navarro. They're all doing a lot of coordination. We have to do some coordination right here. I mean, we need a plan tomorrow. We have to have a plan. We are working on that as a district today. We just have to know what we would do. And what we're doing is really trying to follow the lead of the police. But some of that bigger coordination, one of the goals that we have, I think Mr. Bartley has set November 4th, or November 3rd, Mr. Bartley, 3rd. That's when we have our safety, annual safety meeting. I would invite any board member to attend that safety meeting and listen in. That would be the best time for any kind of level of coordination that changes what we do to hear about that.
That's great. You guys are making the school safe on my birthday.
Oh, is November 3rd your birthday?
Technically, because of the Philippines.
Okay. All right,
But it's
great.
November 4th.
Yeah,
It would be
great.
November 3rd here
Gotcha.
when I was born.
So it's, safety is an everyday, 24/7 enterprise. Anything about facilities, your strategy, your thoughts as we continue to have the conversations? We've really centered our, and just to check for understanding, we've centered our work around the consensus we believe you have from past board meetings of looking at a renovation of Central, finishing some projects here that were deferred rather than new construction. So I'll just.
I was thinking about, doing any potential addition to East. Because I know when we put the back end on, we specified that it needs to be, we need to be able to build up.
Right, in 2017, the board did not, all of the recommended remodeling and renovations that DLA suggested, the board did not use all of those.
Right.
And so part of what we're looking at is what would we do if we did finish those off?
Sorry, when you say that, do you mean that some of those classrooms are not even being used?
No, they're all being used,
Okay.
but there were some additional plans that the board did not move forward with because of cost. So for example, our issue isn't overcrowding, and you know that from our demographic projection. Our issue is space. Some of the spaces that are really at a premium are things like conference rooms. This room gets used more than you ever would imagine because it almost has become our chief conference room. Gyms. We have so many sports activities that gym space, especially in an area that has inclement weather, can get very, very difficult. Our concession stands and bathrooms, Mrs. Kishline not only is our union president, but she's also our ticket manager does an extraordinary job, but she could probably attest to the ticket booths, the concessions, the bathrooms out at Porter Stadium, probably, they haven't been touched since 1999. And that was a while ago. And so things like that were deferred in 2017, but a real need there.
What do you mean by deferred?
They weren't updated.
Do it later.
Yeah, do it later, do it sometime. Another board will take care of that, and that's you. You know, I think your challenge at Central is, it is a sound facility, but it has two issues. One, it has some infrastructure that should be updated if we as a district continue to use it. And there are opportunities for modeling. There are spaces that are not used at all at Central that could be repurposed for more modern facilities. Then your issue at East.
Like what would you be able to,
Like the auditorium is an enormous amount of space.
that we
is
don't
not-
use?
We don't really, we use it for some bands that rehearse in. Dr. Green has some meetings there. But in general, that enormous amount of space is not routinely used.
Okay.
So it's almost a quarter of the building.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
So why don't we turn that into maybe a conference room?
There's many things you could do with a space like that.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things the board would have to decide is renovating, remodeling, what's the scope and the cost of the work you would like to see done at Central. There are many opportunities. It's just, I keep on bringing this back each month, because in the short sense, I believe, and Dr. Shaw mentioned this in one of our meetings, we would never want to be in a situation where the infrastructure at Central is not up to par, but we have 1,000 students that we have to educate and house. We would never want to be in that situation, so I believe one of the things we have to do is be responsible and recognize we have needs. But also, is there some remodeling you would like to do, some reinventing of some spaces at Central that keep the integrity of the building and what it means to the community, but at the same time, create a new vision and some more modern classrooms, something we talked about when we toured Central, Mr. Devon.
Is the auditorium really a quarter of the volume of Central?
I might be off, quarter?
I think if you add the cafeteria and the whole thing.
Would be a quarter?
it's pretty close to
Okay.
40% or something. It is a big section, it really is.
I didn't think, I knew it was big, I didn't think it would be a quarter of the entire
Hmm.
campus, that's huge.
It's multiple floors.
Right. It's really basement to ceiling. If you go from the cafeteria all the way to the very top of the auditorium.
Yeah.
All right, and finally, student achievement report. Next month, I will come to you and with many of my colleagues, really try to paint a picture of achievement in the past year, a very unusual year. And I would just invite you, the moment might not be now, I've already received a request. Dr. Christofero has received a request from Mrs. Johnson, particularly keen about freshman achievement. If there's a story you want told, the board has really narrowed in with your goal number one on college and career readiness. So my lesson plan right now is to bring you data about college and career readiness. You'll receive a very, very thick binder that we get great help from Doris Fleckenstein, who generates a lot of that statistical analysis. But for the purposes here, when we're together, really think about what do we want to dig into to learn more about our students' achievement. So if there are things like Mrs. Johnson made a request, freshman achievement, that are on your mind, please send them my way over the next month and help me prepare to be as useful as possible in terms of telling that full and complete story. I think our goal is to capture all the marvelous work, incredible work that our teachers have done through this time and academic leaders have done, and then what are the opportunities for growth. So that's my report.
Thank you. All right, moving on, information reports.
Good evening, everybody. We are super excited because we do feel like the school year is off to one of our old traditional starts. And so we were very happy to welcome parents back into the building for curriculum night this year. This is the first time in 3 years that we've been able to open the doors and have the parents come in and meet the teachers. So that was wonderful. We had a good turnout. And during the students' lunch periods, we also took the opportunity to have our guidance department talk to the parents about school links that you heard our kids talk about, and then also talk to parents about Compass. For our freshman students, this was the first time the parents were hearing that word Compass, so just to give them a little bit of a bird's eye view into that. So we were excited to welcome people back into our building. And so it was a great start to the school year. As you saw in the report, our fall sports are off to a great start. Many of our teams are ranked in the area. So we're very excited and looking forward to seeing what the fall brings this year with our student athletes. And thank you to Mike Dwyer. As many of you know, we are now having a unified booster club. So he has had his first meeting just this past week. He's still looking for a few board members, but he's done a phenomenal job of coordinating these efforts. As you would come out to the football games, you'll see many different organizations working the concession stands, but it's been a huge success. And then this week is homecoming week, which really is one of our favorite times of the year. It's a great opportunity for our students to come together, show their Porter pride, and really, it's a great time for them to connect to their school. Today, we had over 50 students at Central, and I think you guys had almost 150 students here decorating the halls. So the halls look great. Very excited for the rest of the student body to come back in and see that tomorrow. We have the class assemblies, freshman, sophomore in the morning, junior and senior in the afternoon. Tomorrow night, they'll come out to the football field, have movie night. Wednesday, we'll have powder puff. Thursday, we'll have our all-school assembly, and then the variety show at night. And Friday is our exciting football game against Sandburg. And then Saturday, we'll have our dance inside, as you heard the kids talk about. So it's a busy week. It's an exhausting week, but it is one of the best weeks of the year.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Carrie mentioning curriculum night, being able to do that in terms of opening our doors for people coming into the building. It's also been great for us, our administrative team, our deans, to get in front of our students, to talk to our students about the kind of climate and culture that we want at both campuses. Carrie and I have really talked about our slogans and bringing them to life. Best self, best work, together we succeed, best together. And what does that mean? Putting forth your best effort, giving your best effort in what you do with school. Really also, as hard as you work, everyone needs that someone extra to kind of help push them, and collectively that is best together. But another thing that we talk about with our students that we really want them is to feel connected and welcome to school. And that's something that Carrie and I, with our climate and culture goal this year, really want to not just tell students, yes, you should get involved, but really give them a path on how to do so. And we've had the opportunity to speak to students, smaller groups of students, to talk about all the athletics, all the athletic teams, I should say, that we are able to offer students, all the activities, 50-plus clubs, and then school events, especially this week, as Carrie mentioned. We have a little bit of everything, I believe, for all of our students this week, starting with poster night that Carrie had mentioned. We have movie night, Porter Stadium tomorrow night. We've got our Powder Puff games on Wednesday. Thursday's our variety show in the auditorium, of course, the football game on Friday, and then on Saturday, the dance. And then we've got our class assemblies tomorrow, freshmen and sophomore in the morning, junior, seniors in the afternoon, and then Thursday is our outdoor all-school assembly. So it is a great opportunity for our students to get involved, to feel connected, because once they do that, it's just going to overall help their motivation to do their best in school. And as Mr. Bartley had outlined in his behavior report, and we typically wait until October and do a little bit of a combination of August and September. This year we chose to give you the August data. But Mr. Bartley also outlined, not just for East Campus, but Central Campus as well, the deans really putting an emphasis on a couple of areas. That would be having your ID on at all times, getting to class on time, earbuds out between 7:45 and 2:45, phones away as well, other than a student's lunch period. It's given our deans the opportunity to speak to students. It's given our deans the opportunity to speak to staff and how we can work together to try to best enforce those policies. Dr. Green and I have mentioned in our Sunday messages really asking our parents to talk to their children as well, as we really try to all collectively work together to enforce those policies to help with the kind of climate and culture that we want to have at both campuses. So I echo Dr. Green. It has been a great start. We are really looking forward to this week. Keep our fingers crossed on the weather. And we are super excited for homecoming 2022.
And just before you leave, you know, something to notice for board members in the discipline report, you know, the top sort of consequences are, you know, early on, 473 warnings, 162 conferences with students, 139 phone calls home. And all of that is humanizing an approach to over and over reinforce the expectations across the board and set that tone early. And, you know, sometimes when you see warning, you think, well, that seems not very rigorous, that seems soft. But it's the persistence over time with teenagers, and anybody here who's raised a teenager knows you need persistence over time, right? I was one of those teenagers. I just really commend your effort to get at it, you know, early in the year, set a tone, and do it in a positive way where, you said it, Dr. Green, and deans meeting with students. That really matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can see on the other information reports, the 6-day enrollment count. You have the overnight field trip, I believe there were 7 of them. And then you have the curriculum report, and I don't know if Dr. Shaw, you wanted to on that or no?
Right, and just for the 6-day enrollment count, I think the most fascinating document is the document that tracks our enrollment since 1911. It's just a great piece of history, this document, if you want to draw your attention to it where we're at. Interestingly enough, we here at 2022, 2023, we are actually slightly above where our demographer projected we would be, which is something we would keep our eye on, where we're at. And then the overnight field trips, really just if there are any questions, those are all field trips that we know that are going out. The board should be aware that we've got students overnight in hotels. One thing I was talking with Mr. Navarro earlier this afternoon, and I've had in your board update, is the idea of expanding that to international trips. We've had outreach from a school in Yokohama, Japan that would like to partner with us and have an official partnership. And having this year a conversation with the board about overnight trips that might involve international travel as well. So let me get out of the way for the curriculum report.
Well, good evening. I want to start our report with a note of gratitude. Thanks to the board for approving the money for the summer curriculum work that was done, but then also thanks to our teachers who did so much work over the summer. You can see the number of hours they did. Really, it's in an effort to what I'm going to talk to you about here at the end of the report. The 3 big things you would have seen as you look through what the teachers did was this word assessments. Assessments can mean like a traditional test or quiz, but it could be a writing prompt. It could be our music educators talking about rubrics, how they're going to determine if a student is where they need to be. So that's what an assessment is, and you'll see lots of that language in here. You'll see language around learning targets. So really, we put forth a really strong effort that all of our classrooms will have learning targets, and that's student-friendly language of what the students are expected to learn, so that the student can then be accountable, like, did I get this? Did I not get this? And then talk to their teachers or schedule a Compass appointment with the teacher. And conversely, the teachers can use the learning targets to schedule the students into Compass. And the third big thing is really our effort to have a curriculum warehouse where there are curriculum maps which are usable by our teacher teams to onboard new teachers to a course or to our organization. They can be used by parents and students to help them decide if this is a class they want to take. It could be a resource, maybe if a student's struggling at home and the parent's kind of trying to help them out. Although usually it's never going to be a substitution for going to that teacher's Google Classroom. But it's transparent so our community members can see what is going on in the classrooms. So it is live now. If you go to the district curriculum page, it's under hot topics, hot links. It's down on the left side. It'll say Curriculum Warehouse, and you'll go there. Not everything is published because it was a lot of work to get these in documents that were manageable. And there's still going to be more that are uploaded even from this date. But we're excited to have that happen. And again, really thankful for all the teacher teams and the department chairs that were working to make that happen. I usually like to highlight just a few of the projects because there are so many here, and I've given you the big picture of what's going on. But our students talked about school links, and so I'm excited to share with you, we had an integrated team that created Compass Lessons. Dr. Webb Ray led that work, but we had deans on it, we had school counselors on it, and they were creating some lessons that all students would experience. So it's tied to school links, and so students had to be onboarded to school links so they would understand it. And so there was a lesson plan around that, and over 93% of our students did that. And then also another focus they did for a lesson was all students had to create a SMART goal about their future plans. And so again, over 90% of our students did that. So that's really exciting. Another one I wanted to highlight for you, I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but if you notice, our horticulture class is now a dual credit class with JJC. So really thankful to Colleen Martin, teacher of that course, for all the work she did to make sure we could get students that opportunity. And then Dr. Huntington is going to highlight our third project.
Right, well, we had our CCC program who are back in full swing and out in the community working and obtaining community-based employment. And so that team spent some time working through setting their goals for students in order to meet some of those life skills goals, right? We tend to focus on working because that's what the kids want to do. They want to work and they want to make that money. But sometimes they forget that they still need to, wash their clothes, shop for their food, make sure that they're taking care of their individual life skills. And so they came up with a very rigorous opportunity for those students to practice and learn those independent adult living skills in addition to their vocational experiences there.
Yeah, and Mr. Oster, who's the department chair in special ed, he just talked about how the teachers in that program really had to make some changes after the past 2 years of experience. So it's awesome that they had that opportunity to make sure that that could happen.
Thank you.
Any questions about anything you saw in the summer curriculum work?
Ms. Johnson.
Oh,
The students, I know you're getting a new guidance system, right?
The school links?
Guidance.
oh, guidance, schooling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The students were saying that, I got the impression it was a conflict because they're seniors and they had started their work.
Oh, but we.
So how are you getting around that? It was saying it'd be good for juniors and other people because they already started, in the old system.
Yeah.
Are you
But
gonna
not
have
yet.
both running concurrently or what you gonna do?
So really the way School Links works is the Common App syncs right into it. So I wrote that down as a little note to see what we can figure out, like what's the problem, because it should be pretty smooth. I don't know, Mr. Dusterhoff, if you have anything to add.
Well, I know that all their community service was transferred over, because
They did mention something about, referral letters
The
of referral.
recommendation. Mhm.
The recommendation, yeah, those kind of, I don't know what else, but they did point out that some kind of way
Yeah,
it's causing them basically an issue, the seniors.
and I'll definitely look into that more tomorrow. The way it should work is that the Common App kind of opens up within the School Links. So I'm not sure if we just need like a quick bullet list of here's what you do, students, if you're encountering problems, or here's what you're doing if the teachers on their end are the ones that are having some trouble with it. It's good feedback.
And then all the professional work that was done this summer, I applaud the people that worked on it. How do we measure that it was successful? How do we know?
That's always a great question, right? So the course teams, we have like a curriculum review cycle. So in curriculum, I've shared with you reports before, like it's live and ongoing. So the teachers, when they get assessments back, there's reflection like, how did this tool go, right? Did we produce a good tool? And then we're thinking of other ways to gather feedback on that, right? So we're looking at the students' overall progress, but how might we also include like student voice and about their experience with these tools?
So, as you utilize them, you're analyze them at the time?
Always
Yes.
continuously improving.
Okay.
Yes.
A continuous improvement, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think, just to interject, our 5 Labs dashboards help us on the student achievement side, that if a course has changed, we can take a look at student performance in that particular course in terms of grades. Is there a change? Is there a difference? Sometimes summer curriculum is about changing student performance. Obviously, everything goes to student achievement. Sometimes it's about professional development for our teachers, so they're more ready to teach. Sometimes it's about reorganizing the course so it's clear, it's more coherent, it's more focused. So, all of the above, really, multiple different ways of looking at how a course is revised or an effort is made on the part of teachers.
Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit about the English Language Task Force that was initiated at the beginning of this school year. We looked at our EL learners, and we definitely have some work to do there. The kind of growth in that program or with those students has been pretty stagnant, not just in Lockport, but in a lot of area schools. And so looking at best practices, and they were a group of students that was definitely identified through our DMG review, right? We keep coming back to that thing. That's been a money well spent, right? Because they really have helped us focus on areas of improvement in different populations. And so based on their recommendations, we did make some change in the EL type of programming. There used to be kind of self-contained English and reading courses where it wasn't necessarily getting the same curriculum as the students that are in the regular programs. And so we shifted over to moving those students into co-taught classes for our freshman and sophomore year. And then as part of the EL task force, we're a problem-solving group. There's the members of that are administrators, teachers. We have our bilingual psychologist who's new to our team, is involved in that. Dr. Webb-Ray's on there with us. And we really are like a problem-solving team. So we're looking to make sure that we're honoring our EL students by making sure that student achievement is something that we need to continue to look at, cultivate that culture, and embrace those student learning needs, especially as they start to learn English as a second language. Some things that we weren't necessarily expecting, we had several newcomers move in with 0 English language, which was something that we were not anticipating. Some students, I think our latest students just started this week from another country with limited English. Yes?
Is Spanish still the largest?
Yes, Spanish is still the largest. We do have students that speak Arabic as well as, we have Russian this year as well.
Ukrainian
Yeah.
this year.
So we're definitely seeing other languages there. And so this problem-solving team was like set up, I said that somebody was looking down upon us because we were ready to go and already sitting down and trying to problem solve. So we're looking at some assistive technology for those new to the country learners and how we can better support our teachers with professional development and strategies to use with English language learners, as well as additional supports for those students.
So these students are not, English is not their first language at all?
Correct.
And they don't even have they can't really communicate English-wise?
So some of the students have very limited English, hi, bye, just some initial kind of goodwill language. And so we're working really hard to give them not only access to the English language, but academic
What's
English
the
language.
number
We have 12 newcomers this year,
that have very limited English?
correct?
12? And most of them are, you said?
No.
Ukraine-
Most of them are Spanish speakers.
Spanish speakers?
Yeah, but we do have some students that are from, that are speaking Arabic as well as Russian and Ukraine.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I would just add that a great resource to these teachers who are having more diverse learners in their classroom than they've ever had before are our literacy coaches and our instructional coach. So they did some PD, they're providing individual supports to teachers to help them bridge, like, what are some good strategies for your content area to help these students acquire more language in general and definitely some academic language.
The task force meets every 2 weeks, but we can meet more if necessary. So we're really making sure that, you know, we're wrapping around the services and supports where we can.
You know, and speaking, because we hosted, you know, my husband's on Rotary, and at that point, many years ago, we did host a few students, you know, that came here to Lockport, and they came to us with no English, and they picked up the language very quick. They really did. And once they did that, I mean, academically, they were able to succeed. So
Is that typical? Is that 12 number typical of how many students we take in?
No,
No?
it is not typical. That's kind of where we're like, woo.
I think a lot of schools in our area are seeing that.
Yeah, yeah.
What
You
is,
know.
what is the typical number?
We typically in past years had no.
5 or 6. Dr. Ray says around 5 or 6.
That's insane.
Students are reporting, though, to their teachers, and we hear this on the task force, they are happy here. They are, they're just happy to be at school, like our other students were reporting, and we're working hard to try and help them with a sense of belonging. I know Dr. Greenan visited a group of students, as well as one of our teachers invited them to join a club, and they did. So this is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And they're kind of grouping together, so they've got each other's back. So our new bilingual school psychologist is also working with our guidance office, and they're running some specific groups on, you know, kind of obtaining kind of like, this is America, like, like, let's get ourselves, you know, this is different here, this is different there, and so they really are enjoying that as well. Yeah. Any
more
questions?
Yeah.
I'm just so interested in this. Like you said, there are
Me too.
12. Why is there a huge influx of?
I think everybody's experiencing it in the area. You know, Chicago's a sanctuary city. We've been hearing things about people traveling to this area. So it just depends. There's family in the area. A lot of these people are migrating or coming here, and they're staying with family members while they're getting themselves through that process. So, you know, we have.
No,
Right.
I understand that if there's, but I'm just, you know, you said that it was going up, and I didn't realize that the situation was getting more and more dire globally. That we're seeing 12 when typically we only see what, like 0?
Yeah, some years 0.
Some
No
is
new
0. That's
Isn't Will County the fastest growing Hispanic population?
It is, and newcomer is a word that the state uses, different states use different words, to literally mean that the student last week was in a different country. Could be a refugee camp, could be an asylum seeker, and really if you just look globally, you know, we have a war in Europe that is, you know, is extremely scaled up, has created a lot of destabilization in Europe, you have wars in Africa, you have poverty, gang issues in Central and South America that are all driving people to seek asylum. And some of these students, an additional factor that I know our task force is very savvy about is trauma. You know, some of these students are coming out of real trauma and are coming from very difficult, very challenging situations. So an attentiveness to that as well. Library.
All right. This is kind of to follow up what we did to share with you about the process we used for general resource selection and adoption, how we did English novel selection and adoption. And so now I want to share with you how we get our library collection. This is books and other resources we use in the port, and it also highlighted how we get rid of things too, like what helps them make those decisions. And so at our curriculum committee meeting, Kevin Conway and Jeff Crone, who are our media informational specialists, they came and chatted and presented, and because ultimately in the end, they're the leaders that we look to establish this. So you can see in the documentation they put together, and this is stuff they've been doing, but we're like, hey, we probably really need to codify that so everybody knows exactly how these things happen. So you can see they have a philosophy that's aligned with the board's mission statement. They're looking to very reputable resources like the American Association of Libraries and the American Association of School Libraries. They talk to you about the variety of selection tools where they go to a resource to see what is out there, but they're also looking to what do teachers need to help support the curriculum of the students, what might they be interested in when they're putting things into the collection. They have a robust list in here of what do they do, why do they deselect. It could be the condition, but Mr. Crone really highlighted for us, there are definitely some specific topics of resources that we have that get antiquated quite quickly. And he talked about the field of computer technology that gets antiquated pretty quickly. He talked about some sciences that they have to usually pull as well. And lastly, you know, this just aligns with the district's uniform grievance policy. And there was, you know, seems to be a concern in the general area. We did have a Freedom of Information report about this, and I just want to alert you that anybody can go to the LTHS website and type in the name of the book to see if, you know, if we have it. Doesn't mean they can check it out, just means they can have it. And that our books that are in the library are not compulsory. It doesn't mean everybody has to read them, right? There's a good variety there, and I think both our media informational specialists tried to make sure that there is a good choice for students to access, both for schoolwork, but also for pleasure. And I think I commend Ms. Johnson and Dr. Shaw. They did a really great job of asking questions to our media information specialists about how they get kids to be excited about reading. And so I know Jeff and Kevin just love talking about their programming to try and get kids to engage.
Any questions?
So our hope, we'll bring this back if you have any questions, but we'll bring it back next month for the board stamp of approval on this procedure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I apologize, Dr. Shaw. I thought you were going to speak on that too also.
Well, and I had some notes, but then my computer died, so I had to pull out the backup.
Oh.
So-
I have one
But they spoke on that. Okay, all right. All right, on maintenance report.
Well, you have the
There
maintenance
he
report in
is.
front of you, and as you know, there's William Thompson and there's William Shakespeare, August Wilson, and I would probably say Mr. Thompson is the William Shakespeare or August Wilson of maintenance reports. Great news, you already heard from the kids, and I do credit so much foresight to Stephanie Croy and Bill Thompson's work way last year, getting ready to move off of the school lunch. The downside of that is we will be watching, we had well over 1,600 families that were daily taking advantage of that. That's about $25 a week, $100 a month, $1,000 a year. And so in these inflationary periods, there's an upside to pizza and there's a downside to paying, right? And we'll be monitoring that.
But don't we still have free and reduced work?
Oh, we do, yeah, that's an application, students have to make that application, so we still do have that for students who qualify along the federal guidelines for that, Mrs. Johnson, yep. So as Mr. Top says, freshman students do love their pizza. Still with COVID, even though it feels in the rearview mirror, we continue to clean for health, we continue to do HVAC for health, I think that's important. Another highlight from Mr. Thompson, he met with the contractor for our auditorium project, was disappointed to find out that an important component of that, the distribution panel, excuse me, very important component, the electronics and sound in there, might not be available in January and February. Puts us in a difficult position of, do we stall that whole project because of that very important part to the summer? Just some experience here, that's not necessarily an unusual event. Mr. Thompson's looking at, could we put something in place, do all of the work, have a temporary distribution panel that we swap out when the distribution panel that's really the proper long-term distribution panel is ready. And then this is a long list of items. You can see how busy our maintenance, our operations department has been, renting bleachers in the East Campus. You might see them in the end zone, the south end zone. That's really to engage our students, make more room for our fans. Also create a situation where we distribute the students so adults also feel they can spread out and feel comfortable as well. Tennis court.
Question.
No, yeah, go ahead.
That bleacher issue, is that something we need to look long-term to say we need to do a permanent solution? Or is this something we think is just,
I would probably say right
Temporary.
now is probably temporary. There's no other way to put it. Winning brings crowds.
right?
Losing deflates crowds. So we hope it's a long-term problem, right? We hope maybe have to come to the board and say we need a more permanent solution, right? Right now, I would say it's a temporary fix, and we should keep our eye on it. But if I put your eye, Mrs. Johnson, on a more long-term need, you know, we do need appropriate concession stands, bathrooms. We just don't have it right now. Our unified boosters are outside of the concession stands right now. Tent, tables, that's where they're at, because those concession stands right now, and the bathrooms, and the locker rooms on that first floor of the district office, really not appropriate for a stadium. You know, that is a long-term fix I would nominate to you before bleachers. Tennis courts, new kilns, this really gives you a flavor of all the things we're doing. Important, something that Mr. Dusterhoff and Mr. Thompson partnered on. It's a huge safety issue, intercom system, cafeteria tables.
What's a kiln?
Kiln? A kiln is where, when you make pottery,
Oh.
and you have the wet clay, you fire the wet clay
Yeah,
and dry it out.
I got it.
Yep, you got it. What?
They're old.
They're old, they need to be replaced, they're high intensity, high heat, it's like an oven. And that gets replaced over time, and there's an appropriate, to keep that going. And there's a safety issue there, so, as well, because
That's what I'm considering, is it a safety issue? Or is it
it's
just
not a
because they're
safety issue
old?
when you replace it in due time, right? And then backflow devices, that's also a safety issue. This is critical plumbing, we report to the city of Lockport every year. We had some systems fail, we replaced them, very typical. Any questions for Mr. Thompson, or Mrs. Croy, or myself? All right,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, moving on to our consent agenda items, I just need a motion for the approval of consent agenda items from number 2 to number 6.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Mr. Travis. Are there any questions to any of those consent agenda items? Hearing none, roll call.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Navarro,
Yeah,
Shaw,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. Okay, action consideration items. Do I have a motion to approve, I'm sorry,
And I would hold the phone, this is an
Oh,
unusual
yes,
one with the
yes.
Board of Education, I apologize. I'm gonna ask the board to table this issue, and the reason being, I wanted to keep it on the public agenda so the public is aware of the conversation that we're having with AT&T. We did send this contract off to Robin Schwartz
okay.
for an attorney to review it, specialized in this. We did not get that feedback until Friday. And the feedback we received, my recommendation would be that I would pause, because the attorney isn't finished completely with his analysis, but the analysis to date gave us pause to say, we need to talk to AT&T a little bit more. And we're sure we're gonna get some more feedback, so I would not ask the board to vote on this evening. There's nothing you need to do. You could decide you want to vote on it, my recommendation would be to just to table it to next month. And come back.
Specifically is the problem.
Yeah, you can move to table it.
All right, what specifically is the problem? Just the wording of the contract
There's some issues in the contract also with the lease as well.
with police?
With the lease.
Oh, with the lease.
And what we would do is we would hopefully come back to you in October and be able to discuss this in closed session, because we have attorney feedback. And, you know, in the past, we've talked in closed session, made a decision, you know, to approve it in open session. So we do need a vote, a roll call vote to table.
I just wanted to consider that, do I have a motion
I
to
will
table the option and land lease agreement?
I'll
for a
move
cell
to
phone?
move. I'll move to table it.
I
Okay,
second.
it's been motioned by Mr. Navarro and second by Ms. Johnson. Roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's see, talking now about the budget.
Well, here's Mrs. Croy. To set her up and introduce her, you know, I shared with Mr. Navarro earlier, most people would say the two most consequential things that you do as a Board of Education are hire a superintendent and approve a budget. And very consequential, very important. One, I want to acknowledge her. She's put a tremendous amount of work into this document. Really, that process started a long time ago, officially started in July, when you saw a draft budget. Now, we are required in September to approve a formal budget, which will drive our tax levy process. What we've done, and we've adopted in past years, is you really see the budget in its financial, or for lack of a better word, number state. And then over the next couple months, as we move towards the tax levy, Mrs. Croy will be illuminating to you the narrative that goes with this. What are the dynamics? Let's really dig into the dynamics and understand this budget. I want to turn it over to her. She can expand on a couple priorities that we tried to meet. One, meeting your goals in terms of cash on hand. Two, this board has wanted a balanced budget and avoid deficit spending, especially in the long term. And then three, we have to acknowledge that a year ago at this time, we had a consumer price index of 1.9. That consumer price index now is at 7%. Quite a bit different, and our, you know, our finances are indexed against the consumer price index and inflation. We've tried to meet all three of those priorities for you with this budget. I want to turn it over to Mrs. Croy. Any thoughts? But also, we're really here to dig into it and answer your questions.
Dr. McBride, I think you provided, thank you. I think you provided some handouts, right? So.
Right, you do have, there are, some of the attachments, if you look in your board packet, are the paper copies of some of the financials themselves, so you can have them. Certainly you could open them up on your computer, but we thought that having them in your hand would also be meaningful.
Right, so as Dr. McBride explained, the budget, you know, purposes of the budget obviously are to fund our operations, right? And the board has some financial goals, and the budget is definitely aligned to those goals. That's the intention, right? I can do one of two things, and it's at the board's discretion. What would you like me to do? Would you like me to walk through these? Would you like to just answer questions on what you're looking at? What would you like me to do? It's kind of.
I think if anybody has questions, they can just ask them at this point.
The sort of three areas that I mentioned earlier, the areas that we've really worked on. Cash on hand as important in order to help us as a rudder, use a ship of knowledge metaphor, through inflation, state regulation, evidence-based funding. Oh, we have ESSER funds now, we won't have ESSER funds after 2024. So we've used that as a rudder in many ways. A balanced budget, making sure that we take a look at what we will spend, but also what our income will be, and our income versus our expenses, and ending up, you know, year to year in a balanced way. And then inflation. We have, your wisdom, we actually have negotiated, we're in a good place, We're not negotiating contracts right now, and we have current collective bargaining agreements that put us in a good position to weather some of the inflationary pressures that we're experiencing. But we have all sorts of materials, equipment, food supplies, you name it, that are rising with that rising consumer price index. We do have some things that help us in the short term, ESSER funds, corporate personal property replacement tax, but those we anticipate are temporary. So really, this budget tries to be more long-term.
That's my question. We've been, is it ESSA, which is the CARES Act money? We had that, what, 2-3 years? Somewhat.
It's like this is the second, like into two
Yeah,
and a half,
second
right?
year.
Yeah.
And now,
Second full
then we
year.
got the ARPA, American Rescue Plan funds. So how does all that play into this budget?
Okay.
Because it's been, we use it to purchase stuff and do stuff, right?
Yes, there's actually a lot we're doing with it. And there were actually multiple phases of all those funds, right? So like the CARES Act stuff was the initial infusion, right? And we've spent all of that. That was actually the smallest amount of money, actually. Then the next ESSER 2 group is another big chunk of money, which was spent mostly last year, and we're finishing that up this year. And one of the biggest things that we're actually funding with that is a big chunk of it, which addresses what the government is referring to as learning loss. I know we don't like to use that word, but that is what they use. Right, is the compass period, right? So in our union contract with our teachers, adding that compass period into the schedule was an extra duty of sorts for the teachers, which triggered, and we negotiated a stipend for that. Well, the first 3 years of that are being paid for from ESSER 2 money, and then ESSER 3, the ARP ESSER money. So the ARP ESSER money is divided. We've prepared I've written the grant application for that, so that we spend about half of it this year and about half of it next year, so that we're kind of spreading it all out as long as we can, so that it helps kind of sustain and makes it a little easier to transition off of these funds, right? If we tried to spend all of the ESSER funds all in the same year that we received them, then we would have a big drop off of the revenue, right? So we're trying to.
Or create an obligation.
Right.
Year after year after year that we've made for ourselves.
That we now have to pay for with local
Right.
funds, correct. And so we're trying to spread them out a little bit. But this budget includes the end of ESSER 2 money and 1 year of, like about half of the ESSER 3, the ARP ESSER money.
Okay, so when it finally ends, what's gonna happen to Compass?
Hopefully nothing. See, so that is the plan, that is the plan, hopefully nothing. Because at that point, it's already built in and we're doing just the incremental, right? So if our incremental revenues can still keep up with that, and that is another definitive reason why we need to keep our tax levy up to meet those costs, right? Because if we don't continue to levy what we need to keep up with those inflationary costs, then we will see that kind of a drop off.
So
We won't in
the
the
tax
future be
levy,
able to afford.
We won't in the future be able to afford it, correct?
the tax levy doesn't take into account that we did get that money?
No,
Okay,
no, it's not an offsetting piece. Certain things are, so like if we, in the transportation claim, for example, if we used any ESSER funds to pay for transportation expenditures, which we did in that very first grouping of CARES money, we kept our bus drivers paid. And that was an offset in my transportation claim that year, so that affected transportation revenue the following year. So, but in the tax levy, that's not how it's computed, no.
And these are really astute questions, the use, and just winding back for board members, I think ESSER money, corporate personal property replacement tax, these influxes of money, but you could also look at our other revenues for tax. Mrs. Corey said something strategically that I think is very important. Rolling that out over time as an important strategy. And I think ESSER is a good example. you spent that $3 million right away on whatever it is that you spent it on. Staff, a physical part of your campus. You now, either have to reduce that at some place, release people, or you find a way to catch that up. And rather than doing that, we've really tried to stretch, and you can apply that to all the parts of this budget, really stretching things out. Question Mr. Lewandowski asked me about this budget with revenues and expenditures and differences between them. You might notice right now, actually with our new teachers this year, we hired quite a bit last year. Not only to replace retirees, but for some new programs. And yet, and you probably saw in your financial report, we're spending less on payroll than we were at this time last year. That's just being thoughtful about who we hire, how we're bringing them in, what their positions are, so that we're steady as we go through.
And that is some of the hope as we, get to the third year of that collective bargaining agreement with the teachers, that we can maintain paying that, because we'll have some teachers be retiring, we'll replace them with lower step teachers, that's the word I'm trying to say. So their pay is less because they're new in the field. Or we may not replace them at all if, depending on the class sizes and things at the time, right? So that's a fluid kind of year-to-year thing, depending on, how many students we have and what classes they take. So we've had to add over the last couple of years, but over the next few years, we may not have to add as much, and then that gives us some savings as well to allow to keep some of those things.
You say you got a balanced budget,
Mm-hmm.
but why is the income 70 million and the expenses 72?
So it's balanced from the perspective of you exclude the way that the state of Illinois, and this makes sense actually. A balanced budget is a balanced operating budget. So our operating expenses don't include any capital. Okay, so if we subtract out the capital outlay, it's completely balanced. It's actually in excess. What our budget has allowed us to do is to continue reinvesting into our buildings, right? Some of the other use of ESSER funds was for ventilation. And then we have a portion of the ESSER funds, ESSER 3 funds, set aside in the budget to work on the roof for East, right? Because it'll be air quality projects. The capital outlay is not considered an operating expense. So your budget is considered balanced as long as you don't spend more to run the facility. So if we were spending more expenditures than the revenue we're taking in just to pay the teachers, run the buildings, then we would be in a deficit budget. But because instead, whatever excess we do have, we're reinvesting in the building, that is not counted against us to do that.
And that's been a strategy of the board, is whenever we have a fund balance, especially in operation maintenance, transportation, to put that into the auditorium, to put that into a roof issue, to the consideration we were talking about, renovating at Central, to return that money to the most real thing that the community owns, our facilities, to invest it there. And really, some of the law that we're talking about here that'll drive our levy, the property tax extension limitation law, was designed for two reasons. One, to follow the consumer price index, inflation, but also more frequently go to the voters. And without some of the tools that we're talking about, for example, fund balances and the reinvestment that Mrs. Croy is talking about, if we were living, to use the phrase paycheck to paycheck, we would be going to the voters all the time just to renovate the auditorium, just to put a chiller on the roof. That is obviously, not a political strategy. If every 3 years we were going to the voters, that there'd be incredible fatigue on the part of our taxpayers. And they would rightly so wonder, how are we managing these financial systems?
Right, so what you'll see in the bottom section of the summary is some of that reinvestment, right? The $990,000 that's a negative in the operations and maintenance column, that revenue, the expenditures over the revenue, that number, that negative 990, is the reinvestment into our East Auditorium project, which we the board approved, and we planned to spend fund balance to pay for, right? And then it's school buses out of the transportation fund is what you see there. And there is an allotment there to start replacing our driver's education vehicles as well that we would be purchasing out of fund balance. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that this year due to the situation of car purchasing, but it's in there if
general.
come spring we're able to start doing that, so.
I had a question, and I'm sure you answered it, but I just wanted to make sure, because I know that when I was looking at the fund revenue summary, this one, the pie charts,
Okay.
okay, I knew that you did on 2022, the budget, and then we went over on the actual, but then on the fiscal year 2023 budget, you went less. So I'm imagining it's because you wanted to spend down that fund balance.
So which fund are you looking
Operations
at?
and maintenance.
Operations and
maintenance.
maintenance and transportation, so I imagine that's what you were planning, is spending down that fund
Yes.
balance. Okay.
Yes,
All
it's-
right.
that's
That's
the
that cycle
intention.
of reinvestment.
Yes, yes, okay.
Correct. And then to the board's goal of the month's cash on hand, not just in total, but by fund, there's also some budgeted movement here between those operating funds. So that the money is where it needs to be as we need to start spending for more projects.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
All right. Are there any more questions? All right.
Okay. And then next, like Dr. McBride said, starting next month, I'll try to get you guys more of the narrative, and you'll be able to read through that and ask, and let me know if you have any questions when we get to that.
And the narrative really explains to you the dynamics that will ultimately lead to, in December, we have to approve a tax levy. And so the narrative helps prepare you, mentally, what are all the forces here that are shaping this budget and eventually will shape our tax levy?
When the last thing I want to remind everyone is this is the one thing that every board member needs to sign. So we have 3 copies that you'll have to see Kathy for to make sure that you sign your vote. You sign in the
Before you leave
appropriate
this
column.
evening.
Yes,
So,
please, so that I can file the budget.
Right.
Thank you.
Kathy has appointed us.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023?
So moved.
All right, it's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Mr. Travis. All right, roll call.
Travis,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Shaw,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. Right, let's see, I believe that was it, right? That is it.
Really just announcements.
Yes, and just announcements.
Yeah, very quickly, announcements up there, homecoming week, you heard about that, homecoming football game. Pick your event, I would, Taste of Lockport, Saturday night, or, we've got the homecoming dance here. I would encourage you, Taste of Lockport would be a great place for you to sort of be at City Hall and kind of be involved with our constituents. We have Fall Institute Day. I would recommend, if you can attend. This is Phil Boyd and J.J. Jamansky returning, really, this has been the thinking of Dr. Green and of reconnecting our staff. And you are part of our family. And meeting staff members, understanding the work we're doing with Learning for a Living, you'll have a great morning. I will guarantee it. On Monday, there's October 10th, no school. Pick your holiday. I believe that is National Mental Health Day. That is Indigenous Peoples Day. It's also Columbus Day, so you decide. November 7th is parent-teacher conferences. We will be holding those online. And then we are required by state law, no school on election day.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Make that motion.
I move.
And I can second that. All in favor?
All right. Don't leave.